If you've ever watched a woman slowly lose respect for you and couldn't pinpoint the exact moment it started, pay attention. Because what I'm about to tell you will change how you see every early interaction with women. Here's what nobody wants to admit. Women don't accidentally start treating men poorly. It happens when a man fails to establish boundaries early enough to prevent it. In those first few weeks and months of dating, there are 5 critical boundaries that determine everything. They determine whether she sees you as a man worthy of respect or a man she can slowly take for granted. Miss even one of these boundaries, and you'll spend the next 6 months confused, overextending yourself, and wondering why everything shifted. This isn't about being harsh or controlling. It's not about playing games or treating women badly. It's about understanding the precise moments where men unknowingly surrender their power, and more importantly, how to stop doing that before attraction transforms into contempt. If you don't learn these 5 boundaries early, you won't just lose her respect. You'll lose yourself trying to earn it back. Most dating content teaches men how to react after things go wrong. This video teaches you how to position yourself so things don't go wrong in the first place. The difference isn't about confidence tricks or rehearsed lines. It's about structure. Boundaries create structure, and structure determines who leads the relationship and who follows. If you're ready to stop guessing and start understanding, like this video and subscribe right now. Because once you see how these dynamics actually develop, you stop chasing outcomes and start controlling your position. And that shift begins with the very first boundary most men completely ignore. Boundary 1. Never show your financial hand before she's earned it. Men make a fundamental error. They confuse transparency with trust building. You think talking about money early on is just casual conversation. You think you're being open, authentic, real. But that's not how it registers on her end. To a woman, early financial information isn't intimacy. It's intelligence gathering. The exact moment you start discussing your income, your investments, what you paid for your car, the vacation you're planning, something irreversible occurs. You transition from being a man she's discovering to being a man she's calculating. Not emotionally calculating, practically calculating. This is what I call the provider interview. She hasn't chosen you yet. She hasn't committed to anything. She hasn't invested emotionally. But you're already on stage demonstrating your usefulness. And the dangerous part? You usually don't even realize it's happening. You casually mention your salary during dinner. You joke about a recent bonus. You talk about your savings goals for the year. You think it's harmless conversation. Meanwhile, in her mind, a silent evaluation begins. Financial stability, capacity, potential access. From that point forward, attraction stops being purely emotional and becomes evaluative. Here's the truth that stings. Once a woman starts evaluating your bank account, she stops feeling you. Curiosity transforms into calculation. Sexual tension transforms into practical assessment. And here's the thing, she doesn't even need to ask you for money for this shift to occur. All she needs to do is observe how freely you expose your financial reality, how eager you seem to prove you can provide, how quickly you turn your economic life into evidence of worthiness. Men do this because society taught them that providing equals value, that financial security equals desirability. But early in dating, provision doesn't create attraction, it replaces it. You stop being the man she wants and become the man she's evaluating for utility. That's why this boundary matters so profoundly early on. Because once that frame changes, you cannot reverse it. You can't talk your way back into mystery. You can't charm your way out of being categorized. When you step in too early trying to solve her financial problems, something critical shifts, and it's never in your favor. You don't become her partner, you become her support system. That's the role downgrade most men never see coming. The moment you say, "Don't worry, I'll handle it," Before there's any real commitment, you silently volunteer for responsibility without authority. You offer provision without position. And once that dynamic sets, it hardens like concrete. She might appreciate you, but appreciation is not desire. Gratitude is not attraction. This is where the financial tests begin. They're subtle. She mentions how tight money's been lately. A bill that's stressing her out. A car repair she can't afford. She's not directly asking, she's observing. She's watching how quickly you move to rescue. She's watching whether your boundaries collapse the instant pressure appears. Most men fail here because they mistake generosity for leadership. They rush in thinking it demonstrates value. In reality, it demonstrates predictability, and predictable men get placed into utility roles. The correct boundary doesn't require explanations or defensiveness. You don't justify yourself. You don't over-explain. You don't apologize. You stay calm, grounded. You close the door without slamming it. Something simple works. That sounds stressful. I hope it works out. No offer, no guilt, no entanglement. And here's what surprises men. A woman who genuinely likes you will respect this immediately. Not because she's testing you less, but because she feels safer with a man who protects his structure. A woman with unclear intentions will feel irritated. She might pull back, she might lose interest. That's not a loss. That's filtration working exactly as it should. This boundary doesn't push good women away. It filters out the ones who are never interested in you, only in what you could provide. Leadership begins where access is controlled. Boundary 2, never let disrespect slide, especially when it's subtle. Most men think disrespect looks obvious. Yelling, insults, open hostility. That's why they miss it when it actually counts. Because real disrespect doesn't announce itself. It creeps in quietly and waits to see if you'll stop it. It shows up when she interrupts you mid-sentence and keeps talking, when she makes a passive joke at your expense and follows it with, "I'm kidding, relax," when she casually mentions her ex in comparison to you, when she ignores your text for hours but expects instant responses from you. None of these moments feel significant enough to address, and that's precisely why they're effective. From a psychological standpoint, this isn't necessarily cruelty, it's testing. She's asking one silent question. Can I get away with this? Women test boundaries the way water finds cracks. Slowly, incrementally, one small push at a time. If nothing pushes back, the pressure increases. Here's a scenario most men recognize but rarely confront. You're out with her and some friends. Everyone's laughing, talking. Someone asks how things are going between you two. She smirks and says something like, "He's all right when he's not being completely clueless." Her friends laugh. She laughs. You smile. You tell yourself it's harmless banter, that she didn't mean anything by it. But something just happened. She lowered your status publicly. She used you as entertainment. And more importantly, she watched what you did next. Disrespect tests aren't about the comment itself. They're about your response, or your lack of one. When you let it slide, you're not being easygoing or mature. You're signaling that your self-respect is negotiable. That social comfort matters more to you than boundaries. And once a woman realizes she can step over you without consequence, she will. Not because she's evil, but because you showed her the line doesn't exist. Silence is not composure in these moments. Silence is permission. That's the mistake men make when they convince themselves that staying quiet makes them look calm and unbothered. What you're actually communicating is simpler and more damaging. This behavior is acceptable. When you don't respond to subtle disrespect, you don't freeze the moment. You set a precedent, and precedents compound. One small pass turns into another, then another, until the dynamic has shifted so far that fixing it feels impossible. Here's the chain reaction most men never anticipate. When she disrespects you publicly and you let it pass, her friends notice. They don't see you as easygoing. They see you as the man who doesn't stand up for himself. Their perception shifts first, then hers follows. Because once a woman sees you'll tolerate being diminished in front of others, she learns she can do it privately too. The tone shifts, the effort drops, the attraction erodes. Not overnight, but permanently. High-value men don't respond to disrespect with explosions or sarcasm. They don't embarrass her back. They don't create drama. They respond immediately, calmly, directly. One short sentence works. Don't talk to me like that. No edge, no explanation, no emotional charge, just a clear line drawn in the sand. That response does something powerful. It resets the frame. It tells her and everyone watching that you respect yourself, enough to stop disrespect the moment it appears. This isn't about controlling her behavior. It's about enforcing your standards, because respect isn't negotiated through patience. It's not earned by endurance, and it's definitely not preserved by silence. Respect is enforced. Boundary 3. Never make your time freely available. Just because you like her. This is where most men sabotage themselves before the relationship even has a chance to form properly. You think availability demonstrates interest. You think saying yes immediately proves enthusiasm. You think rearranging your schedule shows you're invested. From her perspective, it looks completely different. When a man is always available, it doesn't signal desire, it signals lack of structure, and women don't evaluate men in isolation, they evaluate the life surrounding him. Here's the pattern. You meet a woman you're excited about. The chemistry feels real, the attention feels promising, and because you don't want to miss your opportunity, you start doing something subtle but destructive. You cancel plans. You shift commitments. You stay flexible just in case. She texts, and suddenly dinner with friends disappears. Gym sessions get skipped. Your schedule becomes reactive instead of intentional. Not because you're irresponsible, but because you're afraid of losing momentum. That fear is exactly what she senses. From a psychological perspective, a woman isn't just asking, "Does he like me?" She's asking, "Does this man have a life that can hold me without collapsing?" When your time becomes an open buffet, she doesn't feel chosen. She feels prioritized at the expense of everything else, and paradoxically, that lowers attraction. Men believe scarcity pushes women away. In reality, the absence of structure pushes them away faster. A man who drops everything the moment she appears doesn't look committed. He looks unanchored. And women don't trust men who have nothing anchoring them. This boundary isn't about playing games or acting unavailable. It's about protecting the foundation of your life. Because when your time loses value, you do too. A man who treats his time like currency is always in demand. Not because he's playing hard to get, but because his life already has direction before she steps into it. When you protect your schedule, something powerful happens in her mind. She stops seeing you as an option she can summon and starts seeing you as a man she has to meet halfway. Time creates anticipation when it's not on demand. That's what most men misunderstand. They think saying no kills momentum. In reality, it sharpens it. When you don't jump every time she reaches out, you signal self-control, and self-control is one of the strongest indicators of maturity. Here's what this looks like in practice. She texts late wanting to see you spontaneously. But you have an early morning, a workout planned, a commitment you already made. The low-value move is abandoning your plans and rushing over, hoping it proves interest. The grounded move is simple. Can't tonight. Let's plan something for this weekend. Calm. No explanation spiral. You acknowledge her, but you don't rearrange your life to accommodate an impulse. That response does two things simultaneously. It shows your time matters, and it makes the time you do give her feel intentional, not convenient. There's an important distinction here. Being busy isn't attractive. Purpose is. A man with purpose doesn't need to fake scarcity. His schedule reflects priorities, his life has momentum, and women feel that difference immediately. When your time is protected, attraction has space to grow. When your time is unlimited, attraction suffocates. You don't win by being constantly present. You win by being consistently grounded. Boundary 4. Never become her emotional therapist before she commits. This is one of the most seductive traps men fall into because it disguises itself as connection. She opens up early, talks about her ex, past trauma, chaos, family drama, how every man before you hurt her. She cries on the phone, tells you she's never felt this understood, and you think, this must mean something. This feels intimate. This feels special. It feels like I'm different. But emotional dumping is not intimacy. It's recruitment. What's actually happening is simple. She's testing how much emotional labor you're willing to carry before she gives you anything real in return. And most men volunteer without realizing the cost. You listen for hours. You reassure. You stay up late calming her. Down. You give advice. You absorb her emotional weight. You become steady, reliable, safe. And slowly, quietly, the frame shifts. You're no longer the man she desires. You're the man she stabilizes herself with. Here's the part that hurts most. Men mistake emotional access for emotional bonding. They think, she trusts me. What they don't see is that trust without investment doesn't create attraction. It creates utility. She leans on you, then turns around and gives her excitement, her curiosity, her unpredictability to someone else. Not because you did something wrong, but because you stepped into the therapist role instead of the partner role. Masculine polarity dies the moment you become her emotional container too early. Mystery fades, tension dissolves, desire flattens, and you can't argue your way out of that position. Once you're emotionally categorized as the safe one, it sticks. This boundary isn't about being cold, it's about pacing intimacy. Because when you carry her emotional weight before she chooses you, you're giving away your strongest leverage. Emotional intimacy is currency, and like any currency, it loses value when it's handed out without investment. Here's the distinction most men never learn. You can be present without being responsible. You can listen without carrying. You can care without collapsing into her emotional world. The mistake isn't empathy. The mistake is overextension. When you rush to absorb her pain, fix her wounds, and stabilize her emotions before there's commitment, you reverse the natural flow of bonding. She doesn't grow closer to the man who carries her. She grows closer to the man she invests in. That's how emotional attachment actually forms. Healthy emotional pacing looks different. You listen, you acknowledge, you stay grounded, but you don't dive into problem-solving mode. You don't become the late-night crisis hotline. You don't let her emotional storms dictate your availability or identity. This boundary protects masculine polarity. Polarity exists when there's tension, space, and mutual effort. It dies when one person becomes the emotional anchor while the other drifts freely. Men often think pulling back emotionally makes them seem uncaring. In reality, it makes the connection cleaner. It invites reciprocity. It gives her the opportunity to step forward emotionally instead of leaning back into you. And that's the key shift. A woman bonds with the man she invests in emotionally, not the one who carries her emotional weight for free. When she has to show up, when she has to contribute, when she has to regulate herself, attraction deepens naturally. This boundary doesn't block intimacy, it preserves it. Because intimacy that isn't earned doesn't build desire, it builds dependence, and dependence is the opposite of attraction. Boundary 5. Never panic when she pulls back. This is the moment where most men undo everything they did right before. Things were good, the energy was there. The connection felt mutual. Then something shifts. Her replies slow down. The warmth fades. The effort drops. And instead of staying grounded, you panic. That panic is instinctive. You feel the distance and assume something's wrong. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe you said something wrong. Maybe there's someone else. And without realizing it, you start doing the one thing guaranteed to kill attraction. You try harder while she does less. It usually unfolds in 3 predictable mistakes. First, you fill the silence. She creates space and you rush to close it. More messages, faster replies, extra check-ins. What you're really saying is, I'm uncomfortable without your attention. Second, you try to reassure her. You offer emotional availability on demand. You let her know you're there for anything. Every word quietly communicates fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of the connection slipping away. Third, you overcompensate. You plan more, compliment more, give more. You turn the volume up hoping effort will restore what distance removed. But attraction doesn't work that way. From a power dynamic perspective, the moment you increase effort in response to withdrawal, the balance shifts. She holds the frame, you chase it, and once that imbalance locks in, desire suffocates. A woman cannot miss a man who is constantly trying to close the gap. She can only miss what has space to disappear. Pulling back is not always a test. Sometimes it's clarity forming, sometimes it's interest fading, and sometimes it's simply life. But panic turns every possibility into the same outcome: loss of leverage, loss of attraction, loss of self-respect. Attraction never returns because you tried harder. It returns when there's absence. That's the paradox most men resist because it feels counterintuitive. You are taught that effort fixes problems, that persistence proves value, that if you just show up more, love will stabilize. But romantic attraction doesn't respond to effort. It responds to space. When you stop rewarding distance with increased attention, one of 2 things happens, and both outcomes work in your favor. If she's genuinely interested, she recalibrates. She notices the absence. The imbalance corrects itself. Her effort rises to meet yours. Consistency returns, not because you chased it, but because you gave it room to surface. If she doesn't come back, then the truth was already there. Your boundary didn't cause the loss, it revealed it faster. This is where men get stuck emotionally. They think, if I pull back, I'll lose her. What they don't see is that they were already losing themselves trying to keep her close. Never reward distance with effort. Effort given in response to withdrawal trains imbalance. It teaches her that she can reduce investment while you increase it, and once that lesson is learned, attraction doesn't recover. Absence does something effort never can. It restores polarity. It returns control to your side of the equation. It reminds her that access to you is not guaranteed. And if she chooses not to step forward when space is created, then you didn't lose a woman who wanted you. You stopped chasing an illusion that required you to abandon your grounding. That's the quiet power of this boundary. It doesn't manipulate outcomes, it clarifies them. You didn't lose her. You stopped chasing what was never fully yours. What you've just learned isn't a collection of dating tricks, it's a system. 5 boundaries, 1 framework, 1 purpose. Protecting your value before someone else decides what it's worth. These boundaries are not about controlling women. They're not about manipulation, and they're definitely not about becoming cold or disconnected. They exist for one reason only: to keep you from losing yourself while trying to keep someone else. When you control financial access, you protect leverage. When you shut down disrespect early, you protect dignity. When you guard your time, you protect direction. When you pace emotional intimacy, you protect polarity. When you stop chasing withdrawal, you protect self-respect. Together they form a filter. Women who are drawn to structure, strength, and self-control will feel safer with you. Women who are only comfortable when you are over-giving, over-available and over-invested will quietly disappear. That's not loneliness. That's clarity. Boundaries don't make you harder to love. They make it possible for the right person to love you without you shrinking to earn it. They ensure that when a woman chooses you, she's choosing the man you actually are, not the version that sacrifices himself to be tolerated. And if there's one truth I want you to walk away with, it's this. You don't gain power by demanding more from women. You gain power by requiring more from yourself. If this resonated, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe. Stay here. This channel exists for men who are done being confused, drained, and second-guessing their worth. Like the video, share it with the man who keeps giving too much and getting less. And leave a comment telling me which boundary hit you the hardest. This channel isn't here to comfort you, it's here to keep you from losing yourself.